On February 22nd, the boxing world will witness a truly historic card, billed as the Last Crescendo. A 7-fight spectacle in Riyadh that will bring some of the best fighters on the planet, each bout carrying significant stakes in terms of defending a title or getting a title shot. At the top of the bill we have Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol as they run it back for their undisputed light heavyweight showdown. But along with this amazing main event, we have Daniel Dubois defending his IBF heavyweight title against former champion Joseph Parker. And I've covered both these fights in previous videos. But here I want to draw my attention on the rest of this amazing card and break down the tactics and strategies required for each bout, as this is an event where legacies will be made and only the best will survive. So welcome to my breakdown of the undercard of the Last Crescendo. Before I dive deeper into this analysis, I want to mention about my boxing Patreon. Here you can get access to exclusive film studies not found here on YouTube, early access to upcoming videos, and behind the scenes of what I'm up to. If there's a video you've always wanted me to do, or a topic you've wanted me to cover, I recommend you check out my champ level, which gives you the ability to ask for a video to be made once a month. Not to mention, you'll be supporting the channel and joining a boxing community that is passionate about this sport. I'll leave it in the description below, and on that note, let's get right into it. Let's start off this undercard with Shakur Stevenson and Floyd Schofield. And this is a matchup of Stevenson's elite boxing skills against Schofield's explosiveness and youthful aggression. I do feel this fight presents an interesting contrast in styles, with both fighters having distinct advantages that could dictate the outcome. First up, let's start with Stevenson. He's a master in technical boxing. His style is built on defensive mastery, pinpoint accuracy, and patience, making him one of the most frustrating opponents in the sport, as he truly lives up to the philosophy of hitting and not getting hit. Against Floyd Schofield, Stevenson's game plan will likely revolve around controlling the fight with his jab, footwork, and counter-punching. Stevenson's Philly shell defense, adapted from his southpaw stance, will no doubt be a key defensive tool in this fight, which could very much change the dynamic of how this fight goes. His backhand blocks rear punches while he parries the jab with the lead hand. Not to mention he's mastered the shoulder roll to deflect jabs and lead hooks with ease. And this unique adaptation allows Stevenson to stay defensively sound while maintaining the ability to counter effectively. While Shakur's jab will be no doubt his primary tool, as he'll no doubt use this to disrupt Schofield's rhythm as he comes into range. And it's not just a scoring weapon, but a rangefinder for him, and a way to keep his opponents at bay. Stevenson's jab is versatile, he uses it to frame off his opponent, feint and draw out reactions. And an aggressive fighter like Schofield, I think Stevenson's jab is going to be crucial in slowing down his advances and creating those openings for the counters. And one of Stevenson's greatest strengths, of course, is his timing and accuracy. He rarely overcommits to his punches, staying balanced and composed even under pressure, and this allows him to land clean shots while avoiding unnecessary risks. Against Schofield, who tends to throw wild looping punches at times, and in combinations, I think Stevenson's ability to counter down the middle will be a major factor. If Schofield overreaches or leaves himself open, I really can see Shakur make him pay with precise quick counters. However, there's also the element of Stevenson's lack of power and his overly defensive tendencies, and it can be a double-edged sword. While his defensive style is very effective, it can sometimes come across as too cautious, especially against aggressive opponents. If Stevenson becomes too passive, he risks letting Schofield build momentum and potentially steal some rounds. Additionally, his inability to finish fights has seen him get some criticism, and against a durable opponent like Schofield, he might just need to step up his output to secure a decisive victory. Across the ring from him will be the young and versatile Floyd Schofield, and he is maybe the polar opposite of Stevenson. He's high energy, aggressive, and relies on volume punching, athleticism, and relentless pressure at times. I imagine Schofield's goal will be to turn this fight into a dogfight and try to force Stevenson out of his comfort zone. Schofield's high work rate and combination punching, in my opinion, will be his biggest weapons. He throws in bunches, targeting both the head and body to wear down his opponents. And against Shakur, Schofield will need to use his footwork to cut off the ring and prevent Stevenson from pivoting and circling away from him. If he can back Stevenson up to the ropes, he'll unleash those short hooks and uppercuts in close quarters. We have seen Stevenson get caught now and again. Schofield also has the ability to switch stances, and this could also create angles and routes of attack that might trouble Stevenson.
Oh, big right hand from Schofield!
By switching between orthodox and southpaw, I do think Schofield could disrupt Stevenson's rhythm and surprise him with some power shots. However, this strategy comes with risks, as switching stances against a defensively sound fighter like Stevenson could leave him wide open to counters if he's not careful. I also think one of Schofield's biggest challenges will be fighting at the right pace. While his high energy style is effective at overwhelming opponents at times, due to the level of opposition he'll be up against, he'll need to be strategic to when to ramp up the pressure and when to take a step back. He himself is capable of boxing on the back foot, but for the reach disadvantage and Stevenson being so defensively cautious, I do think he could have problems conserving his energy in the championship rounds if it goes that far. And Schofield's tendency to overcommit and throw punches out of balance could also be a problem for him. Against a counterpuncher like Stevenson, wild swings and overextended punches simply leaves him open to those counters. As I mentioned, I do think this is going to be a good clash of styles. Obviously Stevenson's technical brilliance versus Schofield's relentless aggression, and his youthful inexperience may actually see him take chances other fighters haven't. As he's able to turn this fight into a brawl and land something big early, you just never know. He could shock the world. Stranger things have happened in boxing. However, it is really hard not to see Shakur Stevenson getting the result, considering the experience he has over Schofield. Nevertheless, this should be a great fight. Could see an exciting, versatile young fighter give him some problems. Next up, we have Carlos Adames versus Hamza Sheeraz for the WBC Middleweight Championship, and it could be a fiery contest. Let's start off with the defending champion Adames. Carlos Adames is the reigning WBC Middleweight Champion and a fighter known for his aggressive and power-based style. He's a fighter who thrives on walking down his opponents and imposing his physicality while looking to set up hard punches. And against Hamza Sheeraz, I suspect Adames will look to close the distance and make this a fight at close range. And this no doubt is so he can set up his body punching, one of his most potent weapons. He digs viciously to the body with uppercuts and hooks, often throwing these in combination. The strategy not only wears down his opponents, but it also opens up opportunities for attacks up top. If Sheeraz starts to focus on protecting his body, Adames will exploit this by going upstairs with his wide power shots at some point. Another area I feel that makes him dangerous is his ability to switch stances seamlessly, whether operating from an orthodox or southpaw stance. Adames looks just as effective in both at times, making him unpredictable and difficult to prepare for. From the southpaw stance, Adames will often look to set up his backhand, often behind the double jab, while he often employs a high guard using it to block and parry incoming shots while staying defensively responsible. But on occasion, he will also use the L guard stance as well. Speaking about that, from the orthodox position, he does opt to use that shell guard, rolling with punches or using waist movement to evade shots before countering. This defensive adaptability allows him to draw out attacks from his opponents, baiting them into throwing so he can counter.
That's what happened in his first defeat against.
His shell guard is particularly effective when also coming forward, as he can throw the jab from a lower position out of his opponent's view. And this leads on to my next point about him. It's his wide punches that are the hallmark of his style. He throws with full commitment at times, often loading up in big looping shots designed to intimidate and hurt his opponents, pushing them back. Even if these punches don't land cleanly, the sheer force behind them can make opponents overreact, either by backing up excessively or shelling up into a high guard, and this allows Adames to gain momentum and controlling the pace of the fight. However, these wide punches and a lack of a setup at times could be a liability against a taller, rangier opponent in Sheeraz who you'll be facing. His tendency to throw big, telegraph shots leaves him wide open to counters at times, especially overhands and check hooks. Additionally, his willingness to engage in these risky exchanges could backfire if Sheeraz times him with clean shots as he comes into range. Now let's look at Hamza. At 6'3" and a 75-inch reach, he is a massive middleweight, and he uses this height and reach to his full advantage. His style is built around controlling distance with his jab and picking apart his opponents from the outside. Against Adames, Sheeraz will look to keep that fight at range no doubt, probably try and avoid getting drawn into the brawl where the Dominican is much more comfortable. But for me, Sheeraz's jab is the foundation of his offense. He uses it not only to hurt his opponent, but to disrupt their rhythm and create openings for his bigger power shots. Against Adames, I think Sheeraz will need to establish this jab early to keep the shorter man at bay.
I think Ricky Funes would like him to be.
I'm Personally, I feel once Sheeraz finds his rhythm, he could start mixing in that left hook and straight right hand, or the uppercut. But it's his check hook in particular that could be a key weapon against Adame's forward pressure. If he rushes in recklessly, I can see Sheeraz catching him with sharp counters as he steps in, potentially even stopping him in his tracks or getting a knockdown. Sheeraz's ability to control the centre of the ring is another major strength. Despite being the taller fighter, he doesn't rely on moving backwards to create space. Instead, he uses his long range to attack to force his opponents to reset, often making them take a step back instead. This allows Sheeraz to dictate the pace and keep the fight in his comfort zone so he can set up his power shots. Nevertheless, I will say Sheeraz's upright stance and height make him susceptible to overhands. A punch Adames will likely look to land as he closes the distance, while there also is openings for body shots. Additionally, Sheeraz's lack of speed could also be a factor. If Adames can cut off the ring and force him into exchanges on the inside, I could see Sheeraz having some problems at some point. Once again, a very similar clash of styles to the first fight, where Adames will look to use his aggression, and Hamza will look to use his height and reach and technical prowess to keep him at bay. I feel Adames' best chance lies in his ability to close the distance and punish Sheeraz's body before setting up those overhand rights when up close. However, Sheeraz's jab, check hook and ring control could neutralise Adame's pressure and even set up his own power shots as he picks apart the champion from the outside. Either way, I think this is a fascinating matchup that will test both fighters' strengths and weaknesses. Next up, we have a fight which I'm most looking forward to: Vergil Ortiz versus Israil Madrimov. Two of the top contenders at 154 pounds, who will both be wanting a title shot after this. Let's start off with Vergil Ortiz Jr., who is known for his devastating power and relentless aggression. Ortiz boasts a near perfect knockout ratio early in his career, and I suspect against Israil Madrimov, Ortiz will look to impose his physicality while trying to break down his opponent with his high pressure style and punching power. Personally, I think Ortiz's high guard is one of his most underrated strengths. Unlike many fighters who use the high guard as a static defense, Ortiz combines it with head movement and footwork, making it a dynamic tool. He does keep his hands high at all times, blocking and parrying incoming shots before immediately countering with sharp, powerful punches. And this disciplined approach allows him to stay defensively responsible while maintaining his offensive output. One of Vergil's signature weapons is that left hook to the liver, as he times it perfectly with this punch, oftentimes catching opponents as they throw in their own shots. And if he lands clean, it's a game changer. I feel if Ortiz can land this consistently, it could very well slow down Madrimov and create openings for his power shots upstairs. And we saw Terence Crawford have great success against Madrimov when he started going to the body in their fight. Ortiz also utilises the stiff jab to control the distance and set up his combinations. While he's primarily known for his volume and power, his jab is an effective tool for breaking down opponents, creating opportunities for heavier punches. Against Madrimov, Ortiz will need to use his jab to cut off the ring and prevent Madrimov from using his footwork to create angles. Nevertheless, one thing I will say, Ortiz's aggressive style can sometimes leave him open to counters, as we saw versus Boachuk. His focus on breaking down his opponents and marching forward can make him predictable at times, especially a mover like Madrimov. In my opinion, if Ortiz becomes too reliant on his power and volume and neglects his own footwork and defense, he could find himself walking into counters or even struggling to cut off the ring, as Madrimov is not only slippery, but also powerful. Talking about Israil Madrimov, he is a product of the renowned Uzbek school of boxing, which brings a unique, highly technical style in the ring from Central Asia. Known for elusive footwork and unorthodox angles, Madrimov is a difficult puzzle to solve, with even pound-for-pound star Terence Crawford struggling to work him out at times in their fight. Madrimov will no doubt look to use his movement and versatility to try out maneuver the volume puncher from setting up his power punches. Madrimov's footwork is his greatest asset in my opinion, as he moves around the ring with the grace of a dancer at times, seamlessly gliding in and out of range. This allows him to create odd angles, confusing opponents and making it difficult for them to set their feet. Against Ortiz, I think Madrimov will need to use his footwork to stay off the ropes and avoid getting trapped in the exchanges. Madrimov's ability to lunge in from unexpected distances is another key weapon. He can close the gap instantly, catching competitors off guard with sudden bursts of offense. And this unpredictability really could cause Ortiz problems, who for the most part is used to opponents standing in front of him. If Madrimov can time his lunges correctly, he can land clean shots and quickly move out of range before Ortiz can counter. Defensively, Madrimov's footwork and angles also makes him a difficult target. He's adept at using his movement to evade punches and create openings for his own counters. And against Virgil, Madrimov will need to stay disciplined to avoid getting drawn into brawls. If he can maintain his composure and stick to a game plan, he has the tools to frustrate Ortiz for 12 rounds, while outboxing him throughout the course of the fight. However, Madrimov's lack of one-punch knockout power could be a disadvantage against a durable opponent like Ortiz. If Madrimov can keep Ortiz at bay with his movement and angles, he could find himself in trouble in the later rounds. Additionally, Ortiz's body punching could pose a significant threat if Madrimov isn't careful. For me, this could very well be the fight of the night, as we'll see the power and aggression of Ortiz against the unpredictable movements and technical prowess of Madrimov. Personally, I feel if Madrimov is able to stay disciplined and avoid getting drawn to prolonged exchanges on the inside, he should have enough to win this. However, it's very much possible that Ortiz can close that distance and force Madrimov into a fight he doesn't want. And one thing is for sure, he'll be targeting that body of Madrimov. This is going to be a must-watch fight that promises plenty of drama. We'll have another heavyweight fight in the night, Zhang versus Kabayel. After the Chinese star was close to getting a title shot, his loss to Joseph Parker was a massive stumbling block, but he came back strong in his last fight against Deontay Wilder with that vicious knockout.
Oh, he got one there, and Zhang is onto him, and Wilder goes down hard.
And no doubt he'll be looking to do the same against the German Kabayel. Zhang is one of the bigger heavyweights in the division, weighing over 270 pounds, not to mention he's a southpaw with devastating power and sneaky accuracy, giving him the ability to end a fight with a single punch. And against Kabayel, Zhang will look to impose his size and power early again, using that check hook counter while looking to set up that looping left hand that can be so devastating. But for me, it's Zhang's check hook counter that is his most dangerous weapon. Furthermore, Zhang will use this to set up the power of the backhand, and vice versa. While he tends not to really telegraph any of his punches, as he doesn't need to load up to put you down, catching opponents completely off guard due to the speed in which he does so. And this makes it particularly dangerous when opponents come forward, as Kabayel does like to do at times. So if Kabayel overcommits or leaves himself open in the early rounds, Zhang's counters are so devastating that sometimes there's no return. However, there's no denying that Zhang's size and power could come with a trade-off, his stamina issues being one of them. Zhang is showing the tendency to gas out in the later rounds, no doubt due to his huge size, and we saw this versus Joseph Parker. Despite knocking him down twice, he just didn't seem to have the energy to capitalise on those moments, and ultimately lost the decision. He also has a very low punch output, averaging the fewest punches thrown per round according to CompuBox, also highlighting his conservative approach, which could allow Kabayel to outwork him if the fight goes into the later rounds. For Kabayel, he's established himself as one of the most underrated and skilled heavyweights in the division, despite being considered the underdog in his recent fights versus Madrimov and Frank Sanchez, who at one point were really considered as potential contenders to a title shot. Kabayel was the one who emerged victorious in dominant fashion, showcasing footwork, speed and body punching. Against Zhang, I imagine Kabayel will look to use these same tools to outmaneuver the bigger man and exploit his weaknesses, similar to what Joseph Parker did. Kabayel's pressure was on full display in these recent victories, and against Madrimov, for example, Kabayel didn't rely on fancy footwork. Instead, he used smart pressure and positioning and angles to neutralise Madrimov's power. For example, Kabayel focused moving to his right before launching sudden bursts of attack to catch him off guard. This ability to close the distance and disrupt his opponent's rhythm could be just as effective against Zhang in my opinion, who relies heavily on those straight punches and the check hook. And it'll be interesting to see what he does. Personally, Kabayel is better when cutting off the ring and applying pressure, but to defeat Zhang, I think he'll need something closer to the Madrimov fight, countering him with sudden bursts himself, while not letting him get set. However, he will need to be careful not to run into that right hook, which Zhang is brilliant at setting up, so constant lateral movement will be important to not let him get set. Kabayel's body punching is another key weapon. Against Madrimov and Sanchez, Kabayel's relentless attacks to the body wore down both opponents and set up opportunities for the headshots later in the fight. Against Zhang, whose larger frame presents a bigger target, Kabayel's body punching could be even more effective. If he can consistently dig to the body and slow Zhang down and sap his energy, it could even make him vulnerable in the later rounds. However, as I mentioned, he'll still need to be cautious. Zhang's counters are lethal, and he is an expert counterpuncher after all, especially when opponents come forward trying to land something. It'll probably be safer trying to take him into the later rounds first. Personally, I expect to see a fast start from Zhang looking to set up his hook counter or a big left early in the fight. While with Kabayel, he's proven he can stick to the game plan, and I imagine he will use his footwork and body punching to tire out the Chinese star, take him into the later rounds, and hey, we may even see Kabayel cause another upset. Finally, we've got Joshua Buatsi versus Callum Smith, with whoever winning possibly getting a shot at the light heavyweight title. Let's start off with Callum Smith, and he's obviously looking to re-establish himself as a top contender in the light heavyweight division after that big loss to Artur Beterbiev. At 6'3" though, he has a strong frame for a light heavyweight, as Smith is a more compact fighter, looking to use his jab and straight punches to control the distance before setting up devastating left hooks. And his experience against a pound for pound great in Beterbiev and even Canelo Alvarez maybe gives him a mental and tactical edge, having already dealt with the elite level pressure and power. I believe Smith's jab could be crucial in this fight. Buatsi thrives when he gets on the inside and unleashes his combinations, but I do think Smith's length and sharp counterpunching, particularly his left hook, will pose a serious threat, especially if Buatsi overextends to land his punches. Nevertheless, Smith has struggled against pressure fighters in the past, as we saw in the fight versus Canelo Alvarez, who pushed him back for the majority of the 12 rounds, while also neutralizing him on the inside. He tends to just cover up and waits to time you with a big shot, taking a lot of punishment. And I imagine Buatsi will look to apply that pressure. So if Smith can't control the distance or fails to land a big punch consistently, he could find himself consistently getting overwhelmed by Buatsi, not only on the inside, but even just his jab. Speaking about Buatsi, he does enter this fight as a hard hitter, and I believe his combination punching is going to be key. Unlike Beterbiev, who sets up his power shots with patience and pressure, Buatsi throws every punch with intent, often in barrages. This style can break down opponents over time, and if he gets Smith into prolonged exchanges, I think he has the power to do some real damage on him. His best path to victory lies in closing the gap though, keeping Smith uncomfortable and covering up, while making sure to be defensively aware against any of those vicious counters that he throws. But as seen in his last fight, he has the ability to absorb shots and keep pressing forward that makes him dangerous. His defense remains a concern, as he often drops his hands when throwing in combinations, leaving it exposed to those sharp counters. Against someone like Smith, who has shown he can do this, could be a major vulnerability for him. Another potential issue for Buatsi is his tendency to reset after missing big shots. If he swings too wide or overcommits, he sometimes can be that little bit too passive. However, with this fight, I do think the key battlegrounds will be Smith's ability to control range versus Buatsi's ability to break through with his work on the inside. If Smith can capitalize on Buatsi's defensive lapses with wide punches, he has a strong chance of landing a fight-altering counter in my opinion. On the other hand, if Buatsi is consistent with his pace and wears down Smith and keeps him on the back foot and covering up, he could very well get his career-defining win. Personally, I think this is a really tightly contested fight with no clear favourite. This matchup will come down to who can impose their style more effectively overall. Last Crescendo promises to be a spectacle like no other, with 7 titles on the line and some of boxing's most dangerous warriors colliding in the new mecca of boxing of Riyadh. This is a fight card you don't want to miss, as is one of the most exciting cards we've ever had. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the undercard. Outside of the main events, which are you most looking forward to? And which underdog do you think could cause the biggest upset on the night? If you enjoyed this and you want more breakdowns, why not check out my beterbiev versus bivol 2 and Dubois versus Parker tactical overviews, where I go into much more depth in the key strategies, strengths and weaknesses that could be exploited. This has been Jamie from Boxing Life. Enjoy the fight night when it comes, and as always guys, I'll see you in the next one.